My name is Lachlan, and I have a disability known as quadriplegic cerebral palsy, which in my case means that I've spent my entire life since birth in a wheelchair because of severe and permanent brain damage to the center of my brain, which is responsible for movement and balance. Earlier today, I was asked by a viewer to describe my experience as a lifelong South African in terms of how black economic empowerment and employment equity legislation have affected my prospects in terms of gainful employment as someone with a disability. So that's what I'm going to do here. Firstly, I should define what those things are. Black economic empowerment is the legislative framework by which preferential access to employment opportunities and educational programs is granted to those South Africans considered previously disadvantaged by apartheid. And within that system, there is a hierarchy. So companies and institutions are rated on scorecards. And for example, giving a job to a black woman would grant you more points than giving a job to a black man or an Indian man, for example. And employment equity law is related to this, but somewhat different in that it is more focused on other facets of identity, such as, for example, disability. Now, as somebody with a permanent physical disability, I should technically benefit from employment equity law, but in practice, this has not been my experience. Because although in the law books it says that people with disabilities should receive opportunities at employment and representation in the workplace. This is South Africa, and our economy has been dying for well over a decade now. So, although technically speaking, there are some legal benefits to a company hiring someone with a physical disability, it has been my experience that most employers simply don't want to put up with the added hassle of a staff member with a severe disability. Because make no mistake, that does require certain allowances to be made. And in a failing economy like ours, it's far easier to just employ someone who doesn't have any of the problems I do. Because with the economy being as it is and jobs being in high demand, it is an employer's market. So if you're running a business, logically speaking, why would you hire someone like me who can't easily get around when you have your pick of perfectly healthy, physically able bodied people who could do the job more quickly and more physically efficiently than I am able to? So, no, it doesn't matter that there is supposedly legislation to support and protect people like me, because in the real world, companies don't care about that stuff. And it's been my experience that even when jobs are offered to people with physical disabilities, such as myself, they tend to be menial jobs which pay very little and offer almost no opportunity for advancement or career growth. It is very difficult to have any kind of meaningful life with a severe and permanent disability in this country. And I know that even in making this video, there's a good chance someone will pop up in the comments and say, "Oh, shut up. You might have a disability, but you also have the advantage of being white. What about black people with disabilities? To which I say, fuck you. That's all I have to say about that. Because if you want to go down that road, there is always someone in a worse position. I guarantee you that there are black people with disabilities who have benefited from this legislation less because of their actual disability and more simply because of their skin color. And that is the society that we live in as South Africans. We live in a tick box society where it's not about actual representation or meaningful engagement with the world if you are disabled. Companies and government simply want to tick a box, so you are relegated to the role of being an accessory or a decoration. And that is why I actually find employment equity legislation to be insulting. Because if you, as somebody with a severe disability, are hired on the basis of that identity and not the skills you can offer, you begin to wonder whether your life actually has any value at all outside of what you can do for a company's scorecard. So, no, that legislation has never helped me, and I doubt that it ever will. Because although our government likes to claim that it has the moral high ground, particularly the ANC, who still claim the identity of liberators and the voice of the oppressed, even though they themselves are multimillionaires and billionaires, while the majority of this country lives in poverty. This legislation does nothing in practice to ensure actual representation or opportunities for people with disabilities. It is just an empty show in order to claim some sort of moral superiority or the identity of a benefactor. But as with so many other things about life in South Africa, it's all bullshit. I hope that the viewer who asked me this question actually does get to see this video, and for everyone else, I hope you got something of value out of this. Look after yourselves, take care of each other, and for now, farewell.